Well, this weekend, U.S. President Barack Obama signed a one-year extension of the Patriot Act into law. Democrats hope to insert privacy protections, but they failed to muster the votes. Now, critics argue that infringes on civil liberties and gives the government just way too much authority to spy on Americans. Well, for a closer look at this story, we're joined by RT producer Lucy Kafanoff. Hi there, Lucy. To talk about the controversy here, I mean, on the one hand, supporters of the bill say, look, you have to extend it because you have to give law enforcement the ability to get the information that they need, even if it means, tapping into phone calls or things like that. Whereas detractors say, hey, this is a violation of civil rights, right?
Well, the controversy here is that it's the Democrats who passed this thing without so much as a whisper of protest. I mean, for years we heard the Democrats, railing against the Patriot Act as the very antithesis of democracy and all of the civil liberties that America stands for. We heard so much about how the Patriot Act is less about fighting the war on terror and more about unchecked police surveillance and, wiretapping and illegal searches of homes and offices of private American citizens. And so to have this thing passed without any sort of debate on the Senate floor. I think it was 315 to 97 on the House floor. It's just an odd, almost submission to Bush-era policies by folks who are now presumably in power and can make these changes that they've for so long championed. I've lived in Washington for about 10 years now, and it's just been fascinating to watch the evolution of the debate over the Patriot Act. I mean, you go back a few years and, under the Bush era, the Patriot Act came to symbolize everything that could go wrong in a society that trampled on civil liberties in the name of the war on terror. And the Democrats have promised to, add all of these provisions that would allow government officials to continue to fight their so-called war on terror without trampling on constitutional rights. And they failed to do that. And I mean, you go back to, campaign events even from 2006 and beforehand, and this was a key point of, many Democrats, a lot of these folks who are in office talked about how they want to change the Patriot Act and take away some of these controversial provisions. And candidate Obama was actually no example. I think we have a clip about that.
I will provide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to track and take out the terrorists without undermining our Constitution and our freedom. That means no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens. No more national security letters to spy on citizens who are not suspected of a crime. No more tracking citizens who do nothing more than protest a misguided war. No more ignoring the law when it is inconvenient. That is not who we are.
But look, Lucy, I mean, Barack Obama and the Democrats are in power. So if they had to pass this act, then why couldn't they just put those civil rights provisions in there that they championed all these years?
That's a great question, Dina. I think the official version is that the Senate Democrats didn't have enough votes to overcome a Republican filibuster. But what's underlying this is a political concern. Democrats didn't want to open themselves up to attacks by Republicans who would say, Democrats are weak on terrorism and they're trying to impede the safety of Americans. And I think this actually contradicts the majority attitude by most Americans. I mean, CNN on Friday released this major national poll that questioned people about what their biggest concern is, what is the biggest threat to Americans on democracy and civil liberties, and they said it's the federal government. So if the Democrats really wanted to tackle this issue and were fearful of paying the price at the polls, I don't think this would have necessarily cost them their jobs at the polls. Why not open it up to a filibuster and take a stand against something? I mean, if this thing is really...
Have you been able to answer that question? I mean, why not do that? Like you said, when we look at some of these decisions made, we have to question, hey, is this a political decision? Does this have to do with money, perhaps lobbyists coming in there? So, what do you think is that underlying sort of reason for why this extension is taking place?
Well, I think that's a good question. Maybe there's this sense of, we can only fight one political battle at a time. And we know that healthcare is the big, thing right now. Obama definitely wants to get something passed, and so maybe they're trying to save their political capital to deal with this issue. But, that's at the exception that doesn't address the other issues that they're elected to fight. And I don't think any American citizen would say, hey, I can only handle one issue at a time. If they sent these guys to office to fight for American rights and for the Constitution, then the lawmakers should be able to handle multiple issues at once, whether it's politically threatening or not.
Perhaps they're hoping that this is going to sort of slip under the radar, right?
Well, not with RT.
That's true. RT's Lucy Kafanoff bringing us all those details.